my light bulb came on because I had that free space of being disengaged with all these things that had just been taken over my life and made life just look very impossible. And I said, if we start with process and just do these few simple things, I think we can pull this out and turn this into just a juggernaut. And so we threw away the custom software we spent a lot of money on, and I had to let go of that, and I had a lot of letting go to do at that time.
Hi, everyone. This is Joshua Hoffman and Alex Garashenko, and today I have Christian LeFer, the founder of Instant Nonprofit, a platform that helps founders launch IRS-approved 501c3 nonprofits quickly, effortlessly, and correctly so they can skip the paperwork, avoid legal pitfalls, and focus on their calling. Thank you for joining us, Christian.
Thank you so much. It is exciting to be here.
Good to see you again. Very
You
excited
too.
for this conversation.
I am
Love the shirt. Love the backgrounds. I am always going to call out good shirts and good backgrounds, or plants at least in the backgrounds. And I guess to jump right into it, before we dive into your company, I want to start with how you've built your business, and why you took that approach. And I guess what I mean is because I've read and a lot about you and kind of understood what you write, and you've built essentially your company on a culture of love. And I want to start there. So can you start a little bit more about what that means and kind of why it matters to you?
Absolutely. If you've ever read Simon Sinek, for example, we believe that the world is not lacking for information. People are not broke because they can't do simple addition and subtraction. People aren't ineffective in what they want to do, or maybe in switching careers to doing something more meaningful, or they don't have they might not lack the relationship that they desire because of a lack of information. It's really a lack of understanding oneself. And really, to me, that starts with self-love, because 10 years ago, almost to the day, I lost absolutely everything. My entire life was in a conflagration, and the harder I worked, the worse things got. And I was literally brought down to my knees to where nothing that I could do with all my cleverness and ideas and information that I had at that time could help me. And I let go in a way that allowed me to relearn how to be a human. And I realized that I had, because of my upbringing and just the information I had focused on, I hadn't learned to love myself in a way that really allowed me to pour into others, even though I had been doing good things and working for causes my whole life.
Just to kind of double click on that, because I do want to spend a little bit of time on this, because I love this part, getting into the personal stuff. What does that look like? Like, do you, whether it's an example, whether it's saying something different in your head, like, do you have something that, I'm sure there's a lot of things and it's not just one thing, but is there one thing that you could at least say, this is kind of the change that I made to get there?
Yeah, I sort of started looking at every interaction, including with myself, uh, to give myself much more grace and to give other people much more grace, and understand that, like, every interaction that we have with anyone for any reason, whether it's a business transaction or just saying hello to someone on the street, picking up a piece of garbage, going about our daily lives, is an opportunity to create a little petri dish of love and acceptance of that other person, and just to notice them, right? And just to acknowledge them in a way that is not present a lot in this world. And that is the place where, if people feel safe, people feel seen and heard, and even if not completely agreed with, they feel like they can be themselves a little bit more. And that leads to an incredible level of creativity and just ability to tap into what makes them great. And I believe everyone has something inside, this divine spark inside them, that makes them great, beautiful and unique. And so if you can create a space of safety for that thing to be able to blossom a little bit, you'll get 100 or 1,000 extra out of that person, whether it's the guy on the street, your lover, your employee, team member, whatever. And so I started to play with that idea. And that's really how I've built a culture of love at this company, is first and foremost to really try to help everybody have an opportunity to understand everyone else and feel safe in that space in the company. And then you see all this incredible creativity, and really it's so much fun to come to work. Everybody's just blown away all the time by, there are grind days, but that environment makes those grind days just as effortless as the fun stuff.
That makes sense. And that's the way you explained it is really clear from a culture perspective and internal team. Does that same mindset carry over to other aspects of business and dealing with your clients, or did that change that you had influence other portions of the business and how you structured and built it?
Yeah, it's sort of a chicken or the egg, right? What begets what, right? If this is part of our culture, we start attracting for that quality to begin with. And I was just telling you guys before the show started how our most recent team member, who's just absolutely incredible, we recruited at a psychedelic music festival, or actually, she recruited me. I had no idea what was happening, but it turned out really well. And you know, Taylor is her name. She Because she has this belief and shares this belief, and this belief is reinforced as part of our culture. Um, we have an internal value called refunds to raving fans, and so I love when somebody is upset because usually it's something minor, and it's usually the government did something to them, not us. We're pretty good at what we do, although everybody makes mistakes. And so I have this thing called refunds to raving fans, and that's something that everybody on the team has embraced. And it's about just listening to that person. That person might be having a really tough time. They might have a tough board. They might have a tough home life. They might just find it really difficult to start their nonprofit and get through all the stuff, even though we make it so easy. And so listening to them first to diffuse that emotional balloon and create some understanding, appreciation, and just acceptance of that person does at least half the job. And then we go over and above to, satisfy whatever it is that, that they might be worked up about. And sometimes the government will literally lose a 501c3 nonprofit application. Or a few years ago, they misplaced tens of thousands of payments and didn't attach those to the applications. So then people were getting letters that they didn't pay. And we know they paid because we collect that government fee as well as the regular fee. And so we're able to de-escalate these things very quickly and then over deliver and make that person really feel like somebody cares in this world and isn't just reading the policy, because haven't we all just wanted to go absolutely nuts on the phone and have the person on the other end at UPS or at the post office or motor vehicle or whatever stop reading us the policy and just at least acknowledge that this is a very hard situation and that we have a right to be upset instead of just reading the policy over and over. And I've just seen an incredible ability on this team to be able to do that and really understand and create that safe space for customers as well. And it just yields such incredible results. I couldn't be happier.
Maybe you just answered this, but I still want to ask. We've interviewed athletes and people that hire athletes, and I typically ask, like, what's something about an athlete that makes them a good employee or a good founder or whatever it is. But I want to ask the same type of question on the festival side, because that is a world that I come from as well. Is there anything that you take, whether it's a person or just a vibe or whatever, from festival world that you bring to business?
Sure. And, you could talk about like Burning Man, for example, has 10 principles. And those principles really are just a framework to allow for maximal opportunity for creativity and individuality and all that stuff, but also things like, radical self-reliance. And so, those are really just a framework, just like the Bill of Rights and the Constitution is a framework. It's not really a set of laws. Laws are made that have to comport with the Constitution. But why is the United States the most successful, and for all our problems, the most successful nation in the world? Is because there was a durable set of framework principles set forth. And as long as you operate inside those, you have these freedoms. And that is what allows people to innovate and have all kinds of creativity, run their family, their own personal life, their business, et cetera, as they see fit. And that, like I said, allows that divine spark and that incredible level of innovation to come out in people. And I feel like festivals and Burning Man allow the same kind of things, particularly the festivals that are about plur, PLUR, which is kind of oneness and taking care of each other, respecting the environment, respecting each other. And that framework to me is the same as the American founding because it allows this maximal creativity and everyone knows sort of the rules that you're operating by. And those rules, again, are just mutual respect and trust. And when you have that, you have this incredible platform for, um, you know, thinking outside of the box. And that's what it takes to innovate. And that's what it takes to bring people something really remarkable. And so the reason I'm excited about the idea of recruiting out of there is because in any company or on a sports team or anything, culture has to rule. You have to have a certain set of agreed values because skill sets cannot make up for bad culture. I can't teach this thing in the middle. I can't teach the heart, whether it's our customers or our team. You can't teach heart, but you can certainly teach and screen for skill sets, add to those. You can either, find the ones that already exist, find people who are open to learning, and then you simply have 3 rules, and those come from EOS, but they're from a lot of other things as well. Does the person get it? Do they understand what the job is, what they're here for? Do they want it? Do they have this drive to achieve and really operate at their best? And do they have the capacity to do the current job that you need? If you have those 3 things, get it, want it, capacity to do it, and you have this culture of love and of acceptance and an excitement for building something in this unusual paradigm, you've got absolutely everything you have to build a world-class team, whether that's in sports or in a friend group or in this company.
I love that, and just I guess a few definition: plur, and correct me if I'm wrong. Peace, love, unity, and respect, and then EOS, entrepreneurial operating system. Correct.
Yes, yeah, we're implementing EOS just because I'm the least structured person in the world, so I have to impose structure on myself and in the company. And EOS is based on a book called Traction by Gino Wickman, and it's like an operating system that touches absolutely 100% of everything that goes on in a company, from back office, finance, front office, sales, et cetera, recruitment, meetings, and all that stuff. And it helps everybody sort of operate from a playbook. But those 3 things about people are really easy to just put in your pocket and remember.
And I guess that's a good excuse to get into the company Instant Nonprofit. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do and how you help nonprofits?
Absolutely. So anyone who has ever formed a 501c3 nonprofit, right, has experienced the difficulty of dealing with the government, all the confusing paperwork. There's a lot of nuance, a lot of sort of arcane rules that one needs to follow. And there's a whole series of processes inside the greater process of starting the nonprofit corporation and getting tax exempt status. And I'll explain what that means in a minute. But there are probably, 25 discrete processes, from getting the entity created, right? The nonprofit corporation, getting the EIN, creating the bylaws, creating some required policies like the conflict of interest policy. Of course, when Congress created the 501c3 tax exempt type entity and tax designation, they wanted to make sure that this was being used for the public good. And it's amazing. Nonprofits account for about 1 out of 10 jobs in the country. They have $4.3 trillion under management and assets under management in the sector. And private individuals and corporations give about $300 billion a year into nonprofits. So nonprofits actually do much more than the government does. Most of what the government actually does is through nonprofits, especially in the social services sector and the kind of things that you would be familiar with. So, that is something that has always been a very disjointed process. People don't know who to go to. They call their accountant, they call their lawyer, and accountants or lawyers have great purpose for what they're built for. They are not built to follow a very methodical, multi-agency application process. And so I decided to start this company when I just became morally outraged at how difficult it is to start a nonprofit. I have a little sister who is developmentally disabled. I grew up around Special Olympics, and I kind of just thought that's how it worked. When people are in need or people have special circumstances, other wonderful people come around them and support them. And, my sister's still one of the most wonderful humans I've ever met.
I guess being involved earlier in the process, I guess you're speaking with people who, I mean, you kind of just said it, but like, don't know what steps to go through. What are some of the common pitfalls, I guess, that you see early in the process? Especially if they don't have someone like you to kind of walk them through the process.
Yeah, when people often book calls, or people come to our website, and I've got a gift for you guys and anybody who's interested in listening and just learning more about this for the end. But people either get on our mailing list and learn about what it takes to start a nonprofit, what is a nonprofit, what is tax exempt status, all those things. And then often when people book calls, they're still in ideation stage. They're still coming up with, they think they have a mission. And they usually know what that mission is because they see a need in the world and they've probably even been filling that need in the world. They're already giving to another nonprofit, but they think they might be able to do it better or it's not being done effectively in their geography or their neighborhood. Or they just, they don't have a name. Maybe they think often people think they need to have things much more formalized than they do. Now, if you're just going to start whipping out government applications and completing them, you do need to be a little bit further down the road in how you've thought about your mission, your name, purpose, and all that stuff. But that's one of the things about what we do is we take somebody who just knows they want to do something, and then we can help them ideate through names. We have a 4-step naming process so people can come up with a winner that won't be like Y2K in 2001. And we also disabuse people, right? We help relieve the pressure for people when they think they need to have all of these things perfect or executed already, and they really don't. There's only a few things that you need to start a nonprofit. Because as you guys know from starting business, if you have a great idea for a product, lean methodology, right? You get out there and you see if it's going to solve people's problems and how they might interact with that. And the best thing you can do if you have a nonprofit idea and you're certain that you just think that this could be done better and this is an important mission, put the MVP together, right? The minimum viable product, and get it out there in the world and help one kid or find a foster home for one dog. And you're going to learn in that process. And you might even do a pivot. You might even say, wow, I don't need to find homes for these foster dogs, but what I need to do is provide a forum for people to talk about what to do after they get the foster dog, right? And then you start a website and a chat room or something, type thing. And you might find that the need that you're trying to solve, can be refined or that you can serve in an even better way. But there's nothing like getting started. It's really important that we do things in this world, especially when the algorithms and the media and everybody are screaming at us that all of these things are happening and they're out of our control. And I just say that's bullshit.
The last time we spoke, you mentioned like a specific approach when forming a nonprofit, and obviously, we're spending a lot of time just in that beginning phases, and it included 3 layers. Do you mind kind of going through those? I thought it was really valuable when you mentioned that. Happy to kind of go through them if you like.
Yeah, if you can refresh my memory.
Yeah, of course. So you mentioned nonprofit autopilot, training, and then training on operational and fundraising.
Oh yeah, basically, yeah, we serve 3 layers. When someone starts a nonprofit, there's sort of the entity creation, all the legal stuff. So if you kind of look at that in one corner of the triangle, that needs to be done correctly. And then once you have that nonprofit and you have tax exempt status, you need to maintain that year over year. And a few years ago, about 275,000 nonprofits were revoked. Basically, their tax exempt status was revoked because they failed to file some annual forms, right? Basically a tax return. And so we have nonprofit autopilot, named aptly for that reason. It just puts the nonprofit on autopilot so you can stay focused on your mission. I mean, that is our number one mission as a company, is to help people focus on their mission and not get sidetracked on, waiting a year for IRS mysterious delays that you don't even know why it's delayed or you don't know what the problem is. And it's very difficult to sort of pierce into that process and learn what's going on and how to fix it. So getting it off the ground smoothly, quickly, and our average approvals are 18 days for the 1023 easy short form and 54 days for the long form in the context of what's been traditionally about a year. So that's like really fast. Autopilot keeps that going every year, keeps it in good standing at both the state and federal level, and then gives everybody access to like office hours and sort of a 101 level training on all of the things that you would want to know as a founder, the basic things. How do you run a board meeting effectively and look like a pro even if you've never done it? How do you open your bank account? How do you receipt people for donations, etc.? That's all in Autopilot. And then we have a couple of courses that are our iconic courses, we call them iconic income and iconic impact. And those we help people do the other two main things that take a little bit more of a long standing investment in time and learning, and it never stops, right? And that's fundraising, particularly major gifts, right? Asking individuals and corporations for donations, and putting some operational things in place so that people don't experience founder syndrome, which is where everything ends up burdening the founder. They don't create systems at the outset, and then they can't have volunteers easily step into things like data entry for donations and publishing updates on the website so they know the next event for the dog adoption center. So those are the three areas: is starting, maintaining, and then becoming really adept at fundraising and operations.
I'd love to jump into the process that you take, because what's, I think, fascinating about what you've provided, and it might have been through the iterations that you've gone through, is you have this down to a science. It's a very clear plan of what they need when. How does your operations and process work? What have you done to put that in place so that it does run so well and seamlessly for your clients?
Yeah, I mean, kind of coinciding with that 10-year ago sort of personal existential crisis, I had actually started this business already, and we started taking off and getting customers. One of the things that we found was that, um, you know, when you start a business, you can get very focused on, is this thing going to be viable? Am I going to be able to pay my tiny staff and myself and just keep this thing going? But what we didn't realize is that because this is like I said, there's many discrete individual steps in this process. We hadn't really built a robust pipeline of those processes. And we had lots of customers that would get stuck, right? They wouldn't take the next step. They wouldn't respond to the email or the text, or the government would have some kind of hold up, and we didn't really have a process for um, dislodging that and getting that moving forward. So when I stepped away from my entire life, my family, my kids, my faith, absolutely everything in this little window of um, sort of turning into a monk for a little while, I realized that if we pulled out of the custom software we had started creating and we focused on process instead, that we could absolutely take this thing and everything I had learned up to that point as to how not to do it, kind of like Thomas Edison invented 10,000 ways not to create a light bulb. My light bulb came on because I had that free space of being disengaged with all these things that had just been taken over my life and made life just look very impossible. And I said, if we start with process and just do these few simple things, I think we can pull this out and turn this into just a juggernaut. And so we threw away the custom software we spent a lot of money on, and I had to let go of that, and I had a lot of letting go to do at that time. And I used Google Forms, which is non-editable. You're dropping that info. It's going into a spreadsheet. It's not really an elegant solution. But we started paying attention to what is the customer going through on the other end? How does this appear to them? Sort of going back to that MVP. And then I learned about document automation, and we started creating a pipeline and a tool called Active Campaign, and there are plenty of other tools that are like that. It's actually primarily looked at as a marketing automation tool, but you can take any of these discrete processes inside this pipeline and have notifications go out. If something goes wrong, we drag things into an issues pipeline, and then that issues pipeline can be maintained. So what we did was start breaking down on a whiteboard what is every possible eventuality that customer could go through, and how can we make sure that that doesn't get lost in the sauce, right? And if you've ever read David Allen's Getting Things Done, it's not about doing everything right now. it's about putting things in a place where they can be done later and not forgotten, and done in sort of order of priority. And my God, did we take 234 customers who were stuck somewhere in the process out of the first 500 customers that we had. We put them into this new process. And I absolutely said, if it kills me and I never make another dollar and I'm totally disgraced, I don't care. I'm delivering for these customers. And by iterating on that with this new sort of process-focused worldview, we delivered for all of them, and we learned all of the things that we needed to do, every eventuality. And so now there isn't something that comes at us that we haven't thought ahead, for the most part, thought ahead of how can we mitigate that, isolate it, solve it, and then correct it for the future by creating something that prevents it from happening at all.
Very interesting. Has that also allowed you to get a better grasp on your capacity or like tack time of getting a organization through the whole process?
Yeah, what I didn't realize is that from what I've researched, and I don't want to give away too much competitive intelligence, but we've done a ridiculous amount of research in that area. And most of the other companies in this sector, and not just in nonprofits, but even in for-profit formation, et cetera, right? These kinds of government-driven processes use an account manager model. And so one person is doing all of these different things. And of course, brain switching cost is one of the biggest impediments to productivity that you can possibly have. Studies show that like switching tasks has the same effect as like drinking alcohol or getting stoned. So that it when you have 5 or 6 different task switching costs on one person because they're managing an account, they're talking to the customer, they're filing paperwork, they're doing other things, they're doing admin, that really hampers productivity. What we didn't realize was we were creating a moat around ourselves that is just as effective as a patent by breaking down all these things into discrete processes so that person A can own steps 1 through 5 in this pipeline. They're similar types of activities. Person B can own this segment, person C, right? And then you can also hold people responsible so they understand what's being expected of them. And that has resulted in huge margins for us, which allows us to love people and serve them and encourage them and do all those things that we do and over deliver on the value. So we start your 501c3, but that's only the half of it. You're going to get so much support, love, encouragement, and support in the things that we can't do for you. We can't fly to your house and open your bank account, but we can give you an exact written instruction that you can print out and take to the Wells Fargo. So when that 22-year-old associate degree candidate, bless their heart, at the front desk doesn't know which drop down to give you for what type of corporation because the bank software doesn't say nonprofit, you know exactly when to ask for the manager. There is not a speed bump that we haven't mowed down for you ahead of time. One of the hardest things about running a nonprofit is the annual board meeting. To just not look like a fool without and not have to break out Robert's Rules of Order, which no one wants to do that, and be able to go through this 9-step agenda that we provide and this video and the pre-written board minutes, the pre-written board agenda, and make you look like an absolute professional in front of the friends that you've asked to give of their time. That's a different way to look at things. That's not information. That's understanding the emotional win that you want your customer to have. You need your software not to just be awesome or your process not to just be awesome. It needs to make people feel smart because you could have the most awesome process or tool or product in the world. And if it makes people feel dumber, they're going to avoid it.
Love it. Thank you.
I guess on the same topic, when do you know when to use, because you've built software, pivoted out of that and went more to a process, but when do you figure out when you should be using technology to solve a problem versus, having a person do it? Obviously, that person might be using technology, but is there a thought process or an example or something of saying, okay, this is when it makes sense to use technology, this is when it makes sense to use a person?
Yeah, once you boy, we're getting technical, but I love this stuff. Once you establish that a human process works and that you're going to do it every day or multiple times a week. I mean, you can kind of, in the Agile process, and anyone can watch a video on Agile and at least get the basic, Agile Scrum and get the basics of that. There's a thing where you weight the different activities that you're going to do in a sprint. And so you can write down all of the different steps that you're going to do in this process that you're going to use to deliver for people. And anything that, and then give a little rating for them on how important it is or how many times you're going to repeat that activity, and then just sort for that. And so the thing that you're just going to do absolutely over and over, you can sort for that. And what I would probably do is run a few columns in that spreadsheet and say, okay, how brain damaging is this? How worn out does someone feel after doing this repeatable process? Because you want to wait for those things, because some things, copying and pasting several times, that might be easy and not really drain someone's brain. But if they have to actually think and process something while they're doing that, and that wears down their battery faster, you definitely want to wait for that as well. You can also create a third column that says, how easy would this be to automate through Make or Zapier or anything, right? So that and then there are two more. One is the ultimate ROI. Even if this does cost me a little bit to automate or cost me a little bit to create a process around it, what is the long-term payoff? And then how quickly can I get this to pay off, right? What's the initial win? Because if you can spend 5 minutes and just show your team member that you just did something to make their job easier and that's what you care about, you just got to win, and you bought goodwill with them that will last you through automating the much more complex thing that takes longer, that you're telling them, don't worry, we're working on it.
Alex, any other questions on this topic?
So many, but we don't have enough time.
Okay, perfect. Well, I guess with some of the remaining time, I do want to talk a little bit more about how you give back. I think it's very obvious when you hear yourself that you want to give back and you have this culture of love. And honestly, it doesn't take very long to realize how real this is with you. But on your website, it says, and I quote, "Giving back is a part of our mission. Through our foundation, we support causes that make a real difference in the lives of the most vulnerable. Currently, we're helping families devastated by Hurricane Helene and rebuilding their lives." So when someone's doing something so good, and obviously the whole nonprofit space is, but I just want to give them a little bit of space to talk about that. So can you just kind of tell us a little bit more about that and why you do it?
Yeah, and I'll admit, the focus on the foundation here has not been as intense as I would like. And of course, Hurricane Helene, that's a lot of that stuff has been, at least, there's going to be years and years. I drove out there and witnessed the devastation, and just watched where the river literally replaced the interstate in places and just absolutely plowed over neighborhoods, business parks, you name it. But one of the things that's important to us is having, and there are studies that show, if someone owns a business and they get their team involved in a long-term project, that they can actually feel like they're making some progress, right? Not just showing up once in a while to swing a hammer on Habitat for Humanity, but showing up monthly for whatever that Habitat project needs. Retention rates go through the roof. The need to constantly try to increase compensation as a way of retaining or as a way of keeping team happy is reduced, because the fact is, we all love money. We all want to do more things with money, but they've done studies, and especially with Gen Y, Gen Z, money is not everything. And so giving raises has a much smaller effect on retention than a feeling of actually doing something meaningful at that job. Right. So if somebody feels like a cog in the wheel, you keep throwing money at them, they will move. And especially in some of these jobs, coding is kind of, being affected by AI and stuff. But that used to be a great example. People could move laterally and make more every year writing code and really doing the same stuff. They're still a Java front end, developer. And studies showed in a number of different industries that if people got involved with a nonprofit through their work, it drove up retention, drove up job satisfaction, drove up team unity, and all of these different things, which explodes productivity. And I mean, the cost of hiring and training someone is absolutely massive, right? Plus, you don't want your family to go away if you love these people and you've recruited the right people and you have this culture that you're trying to build. It's really important to have the people that also build in it stick around and have a good reason to stick around. So that's why we have that element in place. But our team, it's really interesting. We have a PhD from Pakistan on our team, and she actually stopped doing what she went to school for. She just graduated, just got her PhD. And she decided not to go into the field that she spent getting her PhD in, and asked her why. And she said, because she feels that running the filing department here is affecting the world positively more than what she had wanted to. And that almost gets me a little bit emotional, because I would never want to take away what they've put their years of their life into. But boy, is that satisfying to hear that someone really believes that their job is making an impact every single day. And she actually just came over here for like an internship type thing. And we're going to get to meet for the first time, because our entire team is worldwide. Nobody has ever met each other except for, me at this festival. And so now we have a reason for the whole team to go get together and get to know each other and have a little retreat. So that's really exciting.
That's great.
She started as a DA that I wouldn't even tell you how much she was making, and I recognized greatness.
Sorry, there's a trash truck outside. I'm trying not to get the audio from that. Can you hear it at all or no?
No, not at all.
Oh, you can't? Okay, we'll edit that up. And I guess before we close out, you guys did speak a few weeks ago. It's just you guys, and you guys keep talking about this conversation that you had that I wish I was in. But is there anything from that conversation that you guys remember? And if not, we can kind of just close out. But anything from that conversation that you want to bring in here?
One of the things that stands out to me is your thought on cash flow, and how that it's such a open concept to it that I've never thought about. I just thought it was a transformative, listening to you talk about how you view it. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that came about. I mean, part of the thing of being open to whatever, and being like, everything is a metaphor. All of the little things that happen to us throughout our day and throughout our life are little metaphors that are calling us to look at a deeper lesson maybe elsewhere, right? And so I was about to do, with my business partner, I was about to have a big whiteboard session on cash flow. And so I had the whiteboard out and I had the markers and all the stuff. It was a beautiful day. And she comes in, and I had just realized that I mixed up my vitamins and my LSD, and that this was going to be a very, very interesting meeting. And I had started, because I had done this preparation for this conversation on cash flow, it just struck me that we look at cash flow as this snapshot, right? As this finite, non-moving, non-fluid item, right? Do we have enough? What are our expenses, et cetera? And yes, we know it's going to change a little bit, but conceptually, we tend to look at it as a snapshot. And what occurred to me on this day is that it's very much like a river, and that there's all of the money in the world at one end, right? There's this source point that, whether it's rain or whatever, right? There's this unending source out in the world of cash, of resources, right? And of course, we all go into business, we all go into the nonprofit or the things we want to do, or even having a family, having to have some level of belief that there's going to be enough for 3 kids instead of 2, or what have you, the nicer vehicle, the vacation, whatever. And so we have this sort of trust that we don't really acknowledge that there's going to be enough, even if we feel scarce and we sort of have to work through money issues like many of us do. But I realized that this river concept was a much better way to look at cash flow, and that what we were doing was, conceptually, we have a little piece of this river. We have the little segment, and we can make a little eddy on the side and make a cool, fun swimming pool to play with. And maybe that's the festival with the team. We can irrigate our crops, and that's what we're growing, and that's what we're doing. And we can also just enjoy the process, right, of what's in the river and how we get to do all these things with all these payments that we make and all these interactions with cool vendors and people who are doing interesting things. But what struck me was, we start out with a lot of obstacles in the river. There are big rocks and boulders and stuff. And coming from Colorado, or living in Colorado, originally I was from Jersey, you see how these incredible torrents of water will go down and get bottlenecked at these rapids, right? And it gets very rough and very frothy. And that our job, I explained that day that I believe that our job was to just calmly know that the source is infinite, and that our job is to gently remove these big obstacles from this river so that it can flow more smoothly and more nicely, and at maybe a little bit higher rate. And then we have access to that capital. It's not really ours. It's leaving. Every dollar that comes in, every drop of rain that comes in will leave. But that we have the responsibility to care for that area of our little river and remove these obstacles and remove these blocks so that we can create this environment that people can go on there and play and fish and do all these things and get this incredible bounty and an incredible yield out of it, whether it's, the life in the river or the life that the water gives. And I was able to tie that to the specific challenges that we were dealing with at that time. And that concept never left me. And that's just how I look at cash flow now. And it helps me so much on the tough months, right? Or the months where we have a dip or we broke something on the website and it caused issues. We launched a huge new site, funnels, brand, customer portal last year. And our little upward trajectory got knocked off a little bit. And this was really helpful for me to say, look, it's okay, because we just spent a whole bunch of time beautifying and making this river flow more beautifully. And so when that rain comes, boy, is it just going to flow so nicely through there. And now we're getting the results of that. But it was tough to have a 6 months, flat 6 months. But that's what happens in business. Business does not grow in a linear path. You grow, and then you have to consolidate those gains and put some automations, put some processes in place, train up some people. And so it kind of stair steps versus just, you can't grow 30 to 50% like we've been doing endlessly without tending to that river a little bit.
Completely changes the perspective on growing. What prevents growth? What's in the way? And cash flow. I mean, yeah, people usually look at cash flow as a point in time, as opposed to just it is a flow. And I love the way that you thought about it in removing the obstacles in place. So if you're ready to grow, what obstacles need to be removed? What other channels need to be, dug or opened so that that excess water can flow and not flood what you've already cultivated? Because that becomes a problem as well. And I've been in a startup where we opened the floodgates and it destroyed the company, and we went in 2 years to over 25 million in revenue, and it killed the company. It suffocated the company, that amount of money flowing through us.
Absolutely.
So,
That's what happened early on in this company, is we had all these customers, we didn't have those processes right. And so that was an example of that. And even if you look at customers in that same way, people, right? They're coming in and you're removing blocks and obstacles from their path. And so if you can constantly review your opt-in process or your customer flow and log in as a customer, have your own team mystery shop your own process and not just purchase it, but go all the way through the process. You just can't believe sometimes the things that you can overlook when you are architecting something and you're not going and having breakfast in the home that you just architected and going, well, why in God's name did I put the sink over here when we're having eggs over here at the breakfast bar, right? So there are all those ways to look at that. And so, we talked a lot about psychedelics, and I just sort of brought up how that was an accidental insight. But I think this is, we're in a renaissance with that stuff, and the studies are overwhelming. And if you think about, the PCR test was invented purposely. That scientist took LSD so that he could look at that molecule in a different way. And that was the breakthrough for PCR. And whether it's Einstein and his contemporaries who, invented the stuff, or, some of the beautiful philosophers that we've had, like Ram Dass and Terence McKenna or whatever, I think that it's just a metaphor for being able to abandon the old neural pathways that we get stuck in and look at things in a new way. And we are experiencing change in this world at such a frightening, dramatic pace that the haves and have-nots of the future, to me, are going to be the people that have the capacity to adjust to change, to accept things, and to just allow what is to be, and not freak out about AI or respond or push back or whatever, but just be like the willow and not like the oak. That's going to be the difference between people who are able to survive the coming insanity and job adjustments in the job market, and even in how we deal with each other, governments. I mean, people are just freaking out. And so my recommendation, to anyone I talk to is to start with becoming more supple as a human and more accepting of yourself and others. And then all things will be available to you, because we're going to have to throw away a lot of old thinking and adopt new.
That's beautiful. I think that's a great place to end it. And as we come up to the end of the episode, I really just want to give you an opportunity to mention how people can find you and anything else you'd like to end with.
Absolutely. And not just about nonprofits. I love to talk to people about all kinds of different things. So, I can be found on social. There's only one Christian LeFer other than my dear dad who departed this world a year ago. And to get this great gift that we have for any listeners or anybody who's interested in, what does it take to start a nonprofit? What does it mean? What do you have to start, et cetera? We have a great startup kit, pre-startup kit that allows people to just understand what's going on with all this. And you can just go to instantnonprofit.com/podcast, and it's completely free. There's no obligation. You want to call and ideate with us, share your ideas, whatever. Either me or one of my top people will be there on the phone to help you. And I want to hear, what are people's ideas, right? What are the innovative things that we want to bring to this world in need? Because it's up to us. We now know, everybody knows now, for finally, the government's not coming to help. Nobody's coming to save us but us. And so how can we work together and share ideas and create that beautiful world that we all need to step into, that leaves behind so many of these things that just aren't serving us anymore? So I'm excited to hear from anyone in your audience, and really appreciate the time. This has been absolutely incredible to chat with you guys.
Thank you.
Amazing.
You as well. Yeah. I think we have other projects we might need to bring you on. I'll mention that after. But thank you so much for coming on the show, Christian. There are just some kind of, I would call them special episodes that we get to that we get to be a part of, and it's obviously you, the guest, that kind of runs if that's a good episode or not. And I thought this was just a beautiful episode. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
I'm just vibing off of the amazing things that you guys bring too. So thanks for the conversation.